Hello there. Sean B.W. Parker here of Empowering the Innocent. I wanted to make a short video, audio note about Dr. Michael Norton's important new paper around the subject of misanthropic feminism and the effect on the Crown Prosecution Service in the UK, and how things have been weaponized or litigated, if you see it another way, over the last few decades in Britain and the state we're in. And the paper tries to navigate a path towards the other end of the culture wars, women hating men and men hating women, and all this, and to see the state of feminism and identity politics and the men's rights arena, the manosphere, for what they are, as opposed to what media is saying about them, and the motivations that are behind it all. The fact that the CPS have been gradually expanding the scope of what things like rape and sexual assault mean, and the tensions that it causes between the people, and specifically the catastrophic effects that it has on men and women. So misanthropic feminism is about the fact that it harms both men and women, all humanity. And a lot of the paper revolves back to the fact of if we want to do the best thing for humanity, then isms aren't the way, and feminism is very much a dominant and, to use the term, insidious force in law at the moment. And it's a bit of an elephant in the room. Everyone's terrified to call that out for want of being called a dinosaur or misogynist or anything else. And this is to fail to see the wood for the trees. In Dr. Norton's paper, it's extremely kind, descriptive of the case of John, who went to prison for 8.5 years for reasons that are explained within that, and the difficulties of how these things are pushed forward without evidence, or very exaggerated, very spurious claims, and as are detailed all the time in Joe Newberger's kind of Canadian podcast. His firm deals with a lot of the subjects inside this paper. There's a couple of quotes here. Misanthropic feminism, which is conceived to act against the interests of both women and men, against all of humanity in its success of law and policy reforms, with the aim of making it easier to convict men accused of rape who may not have committed the alleged offence. The prosecution in John's case was also in breach of 2.8 of the CCP, this human rights law, failing to be even-handed in its approach, seeing the complainant as the victim from the outset rather than as a possible perpetrator of a false allegation. And that seeing victim from the outset is reflected in a compliant media which no longer interrogates stories. It props them up or attacks them, either one of those. Very rarely interrogates what actually happened, not what have people said about stuff. And so you get the victim narrative pushed by Keir Starmer, amongst many others in Westminster, supported entirely by the establishment media. We've got to say, not the online media, of course, the famously degraded online media, in order to continue to push through those cases to get the conviction statistics up, because nobody wants to see people people being called a rapist then must be put away for that, and if they don't, we're somehow failing. Where if you actually extend the concept of rape to pretty much all heterosexual men, it's very easy to get those numbers up. This article gets to the heart of that in better ways than I can describe, such is the nature of Dr. Norton's writing. This argument is strengthened further with reference to the Equality Act 2010, which requires that the public authorities in Great Britain, Wales, Scotland and England, including the CPS, not to discriminate against the protected characteristics or citizens with sex listed as a core protected characteristic under Section 4. So these policies that Keir Starmer brought in, believe the victim for shorthand, are counter human rights law and they're counter the Equality Act. So are we going to ignore both those in for misanthropic feminism to continue its power grab, and that power grab includes the marginalizing of white English heterosexual males, without trying to sound too patriotic about it or right-wing about it. That's what's going on. That's what the push is. And this is coming from a classical liberal old school like me, you know, not some hot young online right thing. And yeah, the article is thorough and brilliant, and in the Critical Perspectives magazine. And yes, it's a is the criminal justice system failing almost 99% of rape victims, or are almost 99% of rape allegations to be seen as false? This is the sort of statistic that the article looks into, analyzes why that might have come about, how much is fact, how much is exaggeration, and how much is actually politics. Much recommended. It'll be, yeah, the piece itself will be in the link to this video. So have a read.